All right. I gotta try this again. Oh, I'll move this a little bit closer. This is just the computer microphone. I set the schedule to 10:25, so I'll wait. I'll wait until then. This is my this is my little friend. That's a little too much light on the statue. The statue. In times like this, you really need some determination. That's the thing that I think is possibly the most important. Um, Determined to try again. At least I didn't start Bunnicula. That's all I can say. All right. I think this is back. I appreciate having some patience for the technical difficulties and letting me know that things were going wrong. I only having tried this twice now, I was like, "Oh, I'll use this recorder and make it better," but it made it worse, actually. So I definitely appreciate, whoever told me that the sound wasn't working properly, and now I'm just using the computer sound, which is what I did the first time, so it's not really an upgrade from that, but hopefully it's like a serviceable, kind of sound. So I just deleted the last one so no one will ever have to watch the bad sound. And hopefully this is a little bit better now. That last one set the bar really low. So hopefully this is like slight improvement. So I had read a short story from this, but it's it's not really that important now. But I want to build up. I still want to build up a little bit to the main event here. So I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try something that should be fun before I get into the real meat of the presentation. It's already almost 10:30, so but it doesn't really matter. There could be one person out there who feels like they want to listen to something on Saturday evening. This is all that I'm really doing. I'm just trying to get through a bunch of books, so and have some fun and just feel a bit more comfortable doing stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit of practice here with some surreal writing. I got this book for Christmas. This is Franz Kafka. I think I got this maybe 1 or 2 years ago for Christmas. It's a book of story. It does have the Metamorphosis, which I feel like most people would be familiar with. So I'm not going to read that one, but I'm going to read just a little bit of this one. This has some fun stuff. I remember there was this one story when I read this the first time that I really enjoyed. So I thought this would be a fun thing to try. I'm just gonna cover up the thing that says if people are watching. Hopefully the computer mic is serviceable and they don't have to go through the whole problem with the mic thing again. But if if things really do start being particularly bad, maybe someone can let me know. But I do think that persistence is an important thing with these things and to not be discouraged. Like that last one didn't work, but and it was weird because I tested that thing, but I'm not going to get too hung up on it. And it was just one story that got fucked up, but that kind of doesn't matter to me anymore. I'm just going to move on. So I'm going to try a different one, and this should be pretty fun, I think. Oh, and this thing has some monster energy, so we'll see what happens with that. But that's kind of a fun extra detail. So this one is called A Visit to a Mine. Today, the chief engineers have been down to our part of the mine. The management has issued some instructions or other about the management has issued some instructions or other about boring new galleries, and so the engineers arrive to make the initial survey. How young these men are, and yet how different from each other. They have all grown up in freedom and show clearly defined characters without self consciousness, even in their youth. One, a lively man with black hair, has eyes that take in everything. A second, with a notebook, makes jottings as he goes, looks round him, compares, notes down. A third, his hands in his coat pockets, so that everything about him is taut, walks very upright, maintains his dignity. Only the fact that he keeps biting his lips betrays his impatient, irrepressible youth. A fourth showers explanations on the third, who does not ask for them. Smaller than the other, trotting beside him like a tempter, his index finger always in the air, he seems to be making a running commentary on everything he sees. A fifth, perhaps the senior in the rank, suffers no one to accompany him. Now he is in front, now behind. The group accommodates its pace to him. He is pallid and frail. Responsibility has made his eyes hollow. He often presses his hand to his forehead in thought. The sixth and seventh walk leaning forward a little, their heads close together, arm in arm, in confidential talk. If this were not unmistakably our coal mine and our working station in the deepest gallery, one could easily believe that these bony, clean-shaven, knobbly-nosed gentlemen were young clerics. One of them laughs, mostly to himself, with a cat-like purring. The other, smiling too, leads the conversation and beats some kind of time to it with his free hand. How sure these two must be of their position. Yes, what services must they have already been what services must they have already rendered to our mind, in spite of their youth, to be able here, on such an important survey, under the eyes of their chief, to devote themselves so unwaveringly to their own. Oh, there's a cat outside the door who's kind of hacking up a fur ball right now that just threw me off for a second. Maybe he's been breathing in some of the air from a mine and he has to get that out. Okay, where was I? How sure these two must be of their position. Yes, what services must they have already rendered to our mine, in spite of the youth, to be able here, on such an important survey, under the eyes of their chief, to devote themselves so unwaveringly to their own affairs, or at least to affairs that have nothing to do with the immediate task? Or might it be possible that, in spite of their laughter and apparent inattention, they are very well aware of whatever is needful? One scarcely ventures to pass a decisive judgment on gentlemen like these. On the other hand, there is no doubt at all that the eighth man, for instance, is incomparably more intent on his work than these two, indeed, more than all the other gentlemen. He has to touch everything and tap it with a little hammer, which he keeps taking out of his pocket and putting back again. He often goes down on his knees in the dirt, despite his elegant attire, and taps the ground, then again taps the walls as he walks along, or the roof over his head. Once he stretched himself out at full length and lay still. We were beginning to think something had gone wrong with him. Then, with a sudden recoil of his lithe body, he sprang to his feet. We had only been making he had only been making another investigation. We fancy that we know our mine and its rock formations, but what this engineer can be sounding all the time in such a manner lies beyond our comprehension. A ninth man pushes a kind of perambulator in front of him with the surveying and instruments, extremely expensive apparatus, deeply embedded in the softest cotton wool. The office porter ought really to be pushing this vehicle, but he is not trusted with it. An engineer has to do it, and one can see that he does it with good will. He is probably the youngest. Perhaps he doesn't even understand all the apparatus yet, but he keeps his eyes on the instruments all the time, which brings him often into danger of running his vehicle into the wall. But there is another engineer walking alongside who prevents that from happening. Obviously, he understands the apparatus thoroughly and seems to be really the man in charge of it. From time to time, without stopping the vehicle, he takes up a part of some instrument, peers through it, screws it open or shut, shakes it and taps it, holds it to his ear and listens. And finally, while the man pushing the instruments usually stands still, He lays the small thing, which can scarcely discern at a distance, back into its packing with great care. This engineer is a little domineering, but only in the service of his instruments. 10 paces ahead of the perambulator, we have to give way to it at a wordless sign of his finger, even when there is no room for us to make way. Behind these two gentlemen stalks the office porter, with nothing to do. The gentlemen, as is to be expected from men of their great knowledge, have long dropped any arrogance they ever had, but the porter seems to have picked it all up and kept it. With one hand tucked behind him, the other in front fingering the gilt buttons or fine facecloth of his uniform, keeps bowing to right and left as if we had saluted him and he were answering, or rather as if he had assumed that we had saluted him, he being too high and mighty to see any salutes. Of course, we do not salute him, yet one could almost believe, to look at him, that it is a great distinction to be a porter at the head office of the mine. Behind his back, to be sure, we burst out laughing. But as not even a thunderbolt could make him look round, he remains an unsolved riddle for us to respect. Today we shall not do much work. The interruption has been too interesting. Such a visit draws away with it all thoughts of work. It is too tempting to stand gazing after the gentlemen as they vanish into the darkness of the trial gallery. Besides, our shift will soon come to an end. We shall not be here to see them coming back. Love that story because you just can imagine all these guys following each other around with these weird little inspective, like spy glasses and little measuring, like metal, like pincers to measure stuff in the mine, and they're all just doing all this busy work, and they have their own weird like system, and the word I was trying to just think of is hierarchy. System is okay, but I just said that because I couldn't remember hierarchy, and then as soon as I said system, I remembered what I actually wanted to say. So I might read a little bit more of this book before we get to the big the big finale. So the next one is The Next Village. My grandfather used to say, life is astoundingly short. To me, looking back over it, life seems so foreshortened that I scarcely understand, for instance, how a young man can decide to ride over to the next village without being afraid that, not to mention accidents, even the span of a normal happy life may fall far short of the time needed for such a journey. Oh, that's so short, but that's so poignant. Uh, yeah, I often think about the slipping away of the sands of time and how they're slipping through my fingers and I'll never get them back. But uh, this is fun. I'm glad I'm doing this and I'm not doing something that I hate. And I'm glad the audio seems to be working so far. So I'm gonna keep going. Oh, this one's good. I'm gonna keep going. I'm remembering these stories like as I see the titles, so I'm getting excited. This has good imagery that I might talk about a little bit, but for now I'll just read it. An imperial message. The emperor, so the story goes, has sent a message to you, the lone individual, the meanest of his subjects, the shadow that has fled before the imperial sun until it is microscopic in the remotest distance. Just to you has the emperor sent a message from his deathbed. He made the messenger kneel by his bed and whispered the message into his ear. He felt it to be so important that he made the man repeat it into his own ear. With a nod of the head, he confirmed that the repetition was accurate. And then, before the whole retinue gathered to witness his death, all the walls blocking the view had been broken down, and on the wide, high curve of the open stairway stood the notables of the empire in a circle. Before them all, he dispatched the messenger. The messenger set off at once, a strong, indefatigable man, thrusting out now one arm, now the other. He forces his way through the crowd. Where he finds obstacles, he points to the sign of the sun on his breast. He gets through easily, too, as no one else could. Yet the throng is so numerous, there is no end to their dwelling places. If he only had a free field before him, how he would run, and soon enough you would hear the glorious tattoo of his fists on your door. But instead of that, how vain are his efforts. He is still forcing his way through the chambers of the innermost palace. He will never get to the end of them, and even if he did, he would be no better off. He would have to fight his way down the stairs, and even if he did that, he would be no better off. He would still have to get through the courtyards, and after the courtyards, the second outer palace enclosing the first, and more stairways, and more courtyards, and still another palace, and so on for thousands of years. And did he finally dash through the outermost gate? But never, never can that happen. He would still have the capital city before him, the center of the world, overflowing with the dregs of humanity. No one can force a way through that, least of all with a message from a dead man. But you sit by your window and dream it all true when evening falls. Okay, that's that one. I don't want to get too into like the symbolism kind of stuff, but there was a while last year where I read this, and then I read The Castle by Franz Kafka, and then I looked up some analysis videos because I'm like watching really nerdy stuff like that. And one person pointed out that a popular or common used image in some of the Kafka writing is one character whispering to another character, and I'm not gonna remember all the meaning behind it. And I think part of this kind of like really not abstract, but kind of like vague, like more to like these situations that he kind of gives you to ponder. You have to put some of your own meaning into it. But I think sometimes the whispering is like the things that are said the quietest end up being the most important, and the whispering, like giving kind of secret information, is usually like a character is plotting something. And I'm sure there's a lot of other interpretations as well. But it's interesting that that's a theme that he goes back to a few times. And also just the idea of someone running through these endless doors, and they don't even maybe fully comprehend the scope of the place that they're trying to get out of to deliver this message. Just feel like you can apply that to a lot of things. Sort of, you need to persist even if you don't know when the challenge will end. And it's not even necessarily about knowing what the end looks like. It's just this idea of trying to do the thing that you've decided to try to do, and maybe there is no end. Okay, maybe I'll do one more. Uh, I'm gonna. Oh, there's a slightly longer one. Okay, this looks good. These are interesting because sometimes he'll pack it all into like a page and a half, but this one has at least a few more pages than that. 11 sons. I have 11 sons. The first is outwardly very plain, but serious and clever. Yet although I love him, as I love all my children, I do not rate him very highly. His mental processes seem to me to be too simple. He looks neither to the right nor to the left, nor into the far distance. He runs round all the time, or rather revolves, within his own little circle of thoughts. The second is handsome, slim, well made. One draws one's breath with delight to watch him with a fencing foil. He is clever too, but has experience of the world as well. He has seen much, and therefore even our native country seems to yield more secrets to him than to the stay-at-home. Yet I am sure that this advantage is not only and not even essentially due to his travels. It is rather an attribute of his own inimitable, wow, I'm really putting it all on the line here, trying to pronounce everything, inimitable nature, which is acknowledged, for instance, by everyone who has ever tried to copy him in, let us say, the fancy high dive he does into the water, somersaulting several times over, yet with almost violent self-control. To the very end of the springboard, the emulator keeps up his courage and his desire to follow, But at that point, instead of leaping into the air, he sits down suddenly and lifts his arms in excuse. And despite all this, I ought really to feel blessed with such a son. My attachment to him is not untroubled. His left eye is a little smaller than his right and blinks a good deal. Only a small fault, certainly, and one which even lends more audacity to his face than it would otherwise have, nor, considering his unapproachable self sufficiency, would anyone think of noticing and finding fault with this smaller eye and the way it blinks. Yet I, his father, do so. Of course, it is not the physical blemish that worries me, but a small irregularity of the spirit that somehow corresponds to it, kind of stray poison in the blood, kind of inability to develop to the full the potentialities of his nature which I alone can see. On the other hand, this is just what makes him again my own true son, for this fault of his is a fault of our whole family, and in him it is only too apparent. My third son is handsome too, but not in a way that I appreciate. He has the good looks of a singer, the curving lips, the dreaming eye, the kind of head that asks for drapery behind it to make it effective, the too deeply arched chest, hands that are quick to fly up and much too quick to fall limp, legs that move delicately because they cannot support a weight. And besides, the tone of his voice is not round and full. It takes you in for a moment. The connoisseur pricks up his ears, but almost at once its breath gives out. Although, in general, everything tempts me to bring this son of mine into the limelight. I prefer to keep him in the background. He himself is not insistent, yet not because he is aware of his shortcomings, but out of innocence. Moreover, he does not feel at home in our age, as if he admitted belonging to our family, yet knew that he belonged also to another, which he has lost forever. He is often melancholy, and nothing can cheer him. My fourth son is perhaps the most companionable of all. A true child of his age, he is understood by everyone. He stands on what is common ground to all men, and everyone feels inclined to give him a nod. Perhaps this universal appreciation is what makes his nature rather facile, his movements rather free, his judgments rather unconcerned. Many of his remarks are worth quoting over and over again, but by no means all of them, for by and large his extreme facility becomes irritating. He is like a man who makes a wonderful takeoff from the ground, cleaves the air like a swallow, and after all comes down helplessly in a desert waste, a nothing. Such reflections gall me when I look at him. My fifth son is kind and good, promised less than he performed, used to be so insignificant that one literally felt alone in his presence, but has achieved a certain reputation. If I were asked how this came about, I could hardly tell you. Perhaps innocence makes its way easiest through the elemental chaos of this world, and innocent he certainly is. Perhaps too innocent. Friendly to everyone, perhaps too friendly. I confess, I don't feel comfortable when I hear him praised. It seems to make praise rather too cheap to bestow it on anyone so obviously praiseworthy as this son of mine. My sixth son seems, at first glance anyhow, the most thoughtful of all. He is given to hanging his head, and yet he is a great talker, so he is not easy to get at. If he is on the downgrade, he falls into impenetrable melancholy. If he is in the ascendant, he maintains his advantage by sheer talk. Yet I grant him a certain self-forgetful, passionate absorption. In the full light of day, he often fights his way through a tangle of thoughts, as if in a dream. Without being ill, his health, on the contrary, is very good. He sometimes staggers, especially in the twilight, but he needs no help. He never falls. Perhaps his physical growth is the cause of this phenomenon. He is much too tall for his age. That makes him look ugly in general. although he has remarkable beauty and detail, in hands and feet, for instance. His forehead, too, is ugly. Both its skin and its bone formation are somehow arrested in their development. The seventh son belongs to me perhaps more than all the others. The world would not know how to appreciate him. It does not understand his peculiar brand of wit. I do not overvalue him. I know he is of little enough importance. If the world had no other fault than that of not appreciating him, it would still be blameless. But within the family circle, I should not care to be without this son of mine. He contributes a certain restlessness as well as a reverence for tradition, and combines them both, at least that is how I feel it, into an incontestable whole. True, he knows less than anyone what to do with this achievement. The wheel of the future will never be started rolling by him, but his disposition is so stimulating, so rich in hope. I wish that he had had children and children's children. Unfortunately, he does not seem inclined to fulfill my wish. With a self satisfaction that I understand as much as I deplore, and which stands in magnificent contrast to the verdict of the world, he goes everywhere alone, pays no attention to girls, and yet will never lose his good humor. My eighth son is my child of sorrow, and I do not really know why. He keeps me at a distance, and yet I feel a close paternal tie binding me to him. Time has done much to lessen the pain, but once I used often to tremble at the mere thought of him. He goes his own way. He has broken off all communication with me, and certainly with his hard head, his small athletic body. Only his legs were rather frail when he was a boy, but perhaps that has meanwhile righted itself. He will make a success of anything he chooses. Many a time I used to want to call him back, to ask him how things really were with him, why he cut himself off so completely from his father, and what his fundamental purpose was in life. But now he is so far away, and so much time had passed, things had better stay as they are. I hear that he is the only one of my sons to grow a full beard. That cannot look well, of course, on a man so small as he is. My ninth son is very elegant, and has what women consider a definitely melting eye. So melting that there are occasions where he can cajole even me, although I know that a wet sponge is literally enough to wipe away all that unearthly brilliance. But the curious thing about the boy is that he makes no attempt to be seductive. He would be content to spend his life lying on the sofa and wasting his glances on the ceiling, or still better, keeping them to himself under his eyelids. When he is lying in this favorite position, he enjoys talking and talks quite well, concisely and pithily, but still only within narrow limits. Once he oversteps these, which he cannot avoid doing since they are so narrow, what he says is quite empty. One would sign him to stop if one had any hope that such slumberous eyes were even aware of the gesture. My tenth son is supposed to be an insincere character. I shall not entirely deny or confirm this supposition. Certainly, anyone who sees him approaching with the pomposity of a man twice his age, in a frock coat always tightly buttoned, an old but meticulously brushed black hat with an expressionless face, slightly jutting chin, protruding eyelids that mask the light behind them, two fingers very often at his lips. Anyone seeing him thus is bound to think, what an utter hypocrite. But then, just listen to him talking, with understanding, thoughtfully, briskly, cutting across questions with satirical vivacity, in complete accord with the universe, an accord that is surprising, natural, and gay, an accord that of necessity straightens the neck and makes the body proud. Many who think themselves very clever, and for this reason, as they fancied, felt a dislike for his outward appearance, have become strongly attached to him because of his conversation. There are other people, again, who are unaffected by his appearance, but who will find his conversation hypocritical. I, being his father, will not pronounce a verdict, but I must admit that the latter critics are at least to be taken more seriously than the former. My 11th son is delicate, probably the frailest of my sons, but deceptive in his weakness, for at times he can be strong and resolute, though even then there is always somehow an underlying weakness. Yet it is not a weakness to be ashamed of, merely something that appears as weakness only on this solid earth of ours. For instance, is not a readiness for flight a kind of weakness too, since it consists in a wavering, an unsteadiness, a fluttering? Something of that nature characterizes my son. These are not, of course, the characteristics to rejoice a father. They tend obviously to destroy a family. Sometimes he looks at me as if he would say, I shall take you with me, father. Then I think, you are the last person I would trust myself to. And again, his look seems to say, then let me at least be the last. These are my 11 sons. Okay, that's all the sons. Got the emo kid, you got the overachiever, you got the really hot guy that the girls can't stop looking at. They really covered pretty much everything in there. All right, that's enough. That's enough of that. We might do. There's other Kafka stories that I think would be fun to read, but that's all I want to do for now. But this isn't over. Anyone who's read the title will see that, hey, that wasn't Bunnicula. That's because this is Bunnicula. This Bunnicula right here. I don't know if we have any Bunnicula fans here, but I feel like when this is done, there's going to be at least one who isn't me because I'm already a fan. Now, this is definitely a part of my childhood. I couldn't say how long it's been. Uh, Possibly will be a different experience than the other things that I've read, but I wanted to do something that was a bit less like adult and like really, high literature or whatever. I mean, that other story about the killing the pedophile wasn't that high literature, but it was certainly more adult. So this book is all about you can write something good that doesn't have to be over the top and intense. It can just be a solid story that all ages can enjoy. And I think it'll be fun to read. And it's also the name of the stream. So this is kind of the main event. Oh, it looks good. You know it's going to be a good book when that's the first page. That's all I'm going to say. So we have Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe. They teamed up. I don't know if they're related or if they're married, but they teamed up to bring us this epic Bunnicula, a rabbit tale of mystery. And it says illustrated by Alan Daniel. So we'll see if there's good illustrations. Like this illustration's pretty good with the like a sign of things to come, perhaps. But also, I noticed there's this isn't the most comfortable setup. I just had to adjust my seating to be a little bit more comfortable. But we have this Dear Book Club reader. I guess this book was part of a book club. Oh no, this is written by one of the authors. So this is written by James Howe. Okay, this is an epic list right here. So Dear Book Club reader, here are my top 10 reasons to read books. 10. Books make excellent companions. This is also true of pets, but books do not shed on your favorite sweater. 9. Books fit perfectly in pockets. Okay, I don't know about that one. And then it says, maybe not hardcover books, but that's why backpacks were invented. There's basically no book that I would trust in my pocket, but the list isn't over yet. 8. Books can be enjoyed anytime, anywhere, with the possible exception of under your desk when you're supposed to be listening to your teacher. Oh my God, I'm gonna end. I vividly have a memory of being in elementary school and bringing a book to school and I was either done the assignment early or I hated the assignment so much that I didn't want to focus on it. I just started reading this book. And then the teacher took the book away from me and I started crying. I was really young. I was like grade 2 or 3, and I just wanted to read my book. So I guess I got what was coming to me. But here I am reading books aloud Saturday evening. So I showed them. 7, books do not require assembly or batteries. 6, books are the cheapest way to travel because you get to travel to the landscape of the mind. I added that last part. 5, this is the first one that doesn't start with the word books. The characters in books will become your friends or your enemies. 4, when a book is well written, it will make you feel things you've never felt before. It will also make you think. This is good. 3, books. We're back to the book. Books stretch your imagination. 2, books are a private thing. When you're reading, you can just relax and be yourself. You don't even have to act cool. Honest. I like how they added the word honest, like they're trying to sell you on this concept. And number 1, books are full of words. Words are full of power and possibilities. If you love words the way I do, there's no better place to find them than in books. I'll bet you can think of other reasons to read books. How many can you add to my list? Meanwhile, keep on reading. I've kind of developed my own reasons that I love books. Maybe one day I'll make a list like that, but I enjoyed reading that list. And I think the time has come to just get into it here. There's a dedication to Mildred and Lester Smith with love. There's a little dash that says with love. So, that's it's a nice way to start things out. Then we have the table of contents. But, you don't need to see the table of contents because I'm going to walk you through every part of this book. And then there's a note. There's a note from the editor, but I feel like we can just, like, I've been building this up here, so I think I like how there's 2 pages. There's the page when you open. There's this page when you open the front cover opens to Bunnicula, and then you read the list of why books are good, and then you read some other stuff, and then there's another page that just says Bunnicula. So yeah, they've sandwiched that information in between 2 Bunniculas. You can tell I'm getting excited about this. I've been thinking about this for a while. Okay, it's time to start. 1, the arrival. I shall never forget the first time I laid these now tired eyes on our visitor. I had been left home by the family with the admonition to take care of the house until they returned. That's something they always say to me when they go out. Take care of the house, Harold. You're the watchdog. I think it's their way of making up for me for not taking me with them, as if I wanted to go anyway. You can't lie down at the movies and still see the screen. And people think you're being impolite if you fall asleep and start to snore or scratch yourself in public. No, thank you. I'd rather be stretched out on my favorite rug in front of a nice, whistling radiator. But I digress. I was talking about that first night. Well, it was cold. The rain was pelting the windows. The wind was howling, and it felt pretty good to be indoors. I was lying on the rug with my head on my paws, just staring absently at the front door. My friend Chester was curled up on the brown velvet armchair, which years ago he'd staked out as his own. I saw that once again he'd covered the whole seat with his cat hair, and I chuckled to myself, picturing the scene tomorrow. Next to grasshoppers, there is nothing that frightens Chester more than the vacuum cleaner. In the midst of this reverie, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I didn't even bother to get up and see who it was. I knew it had to be my family, the Monroes, since it was just about time for the movie to be over. After a moment, the front door flew open. There they stood in the doorway, Toby and Pete and Mom and Dad Monroe. There was a flash of lightning. and in its glare I noticed that Mr. Monroe was carrying a little bundle, a bundle with tiny, glistening eyes. See, they're coming back. They're coming back from the movie. That's what people look like when they come back from a movie. Pete and Toby bounded into the room, both talking at the top of their lungs. Toby shouted, "Put him over here, Dad." "Take your boots off. You're soaking wet," replied his mother. Somewhat calmly, I thought, under the circumstances. "But, Mom, what about the—" "First, stop dripping on the carpet." "Would somebody like to take this?" asked Mr. Monroe, indicating the bundle with the eyes. "I'd like to remove my coat." "I will," Pete yelled. "No, I will," said Toby. "I found him." "You'll drop him." "I will not." "You will too." "Mom, Pete punched me." "I'll take him," said Mrs. Monroe. "Take off your coats this minute." But she became so involved in helping the boys out of their coats that she didn't even take him at all. My tranquil evening had been destroyed. No one had even said hello to me. I whimpered to remind them that I was there. "Harold!" cried Toby. "Guess what happened to me?" And then all over again, everyone started talking at once. At this point, I feel I must explain something. In our family, everyone treats everyone else with great respect for his or her intelligence. It's a lost art. That goes for the animals as well as the people. Everything that happens to them is explained to us. It's never been just, "Good boy, Harold," or "Use the litter box, Chester," at our house. Oh no. With us, it's, "Hey, Harold, Dad got a raise, and now we're in a higher tax bracket." Or, "Come sit on the bed, Chester, and watch this Wild Kingdom show. Maybe you'll see a relative," which shows just how thoughtful they are. But after all, Mr. Monroe is a college professor, and Mrs. Monroe is a lawyer, so we think of it as a rather special household. And we are, therefore, rather special pets. So it wasn't at all surprising to me that they took the time to explain the strange circumstances surrounding the arrival of the little bundle with the glistening eyes now among us. It seems that they had arrived at the theater late, and rather than trip over the feet of the audience already seated, they decided to sit in the last row, which was empty. They tiptoed in and sat down very quietly so they wouldn't disturb anyone. Suddenly, Toby, who's the little one, sprang up from his chair and squealed that he had sat on something. Mr. Monroe told him to stop making a fuss and move to another seat, but in an unusual display of independence, Toby said he wanted to just see what it was he had sat on. An usher came over to the row to shush them, and Mr. Monroe borrowed his flashlight. What they found on Toby's chair was the little blanketed bundle that was now sitting on Mr. Monroe's lap. They now unwrapped the blanket, and there in the center was a tiny black and white rabbit sitting in a shoebox filled with dirt. Oh, it's getting good. A piece of paper had been tied to his neck with a ribbon. There were words on the paper, but the Monroes were unable to decipher them because they were in a totally unfamiliar language. I moved closer for a better look. Now, most people might call me a mongrel, but I have some pretty fancy bloodlines running through these veins, and Russian wolfhound happens to be one of them. Because my family got around a lot, I was able to recognize the language as an obscure dialect of the Carpathian mountain region. Roughly translated, it read, "Take good care of my baby." But I couldn't tell if it was a note from a bereaved mother or a piece of Romanian sheet music. The little guy was shivering from fear and cold. It was decided that Mr. Monroe and the boys would make a house for him out of an old crate and some heavy-duty wire mesh from the garage. For the night, the boys would make a bed for him in the shoebox. Toby and Pete ran outside to find the crate, and Mrs. Monroe went to the kitchen to get him some milk and lettuce. Mr. Monroe sat down, a dazed expression in his eyes, as if he were wondering how he came to be sitting in his own living room in a wet raincoat with a strange bunny on his lap. I signaled to Chester, and the two of us casually moseyed over to a corner of the room. We looked at each other. Well, what do you think? I asked. I don't think rabbits like milk, he answered. Chester and I were unable to continue our conversation because a deafening crash commanded our attention. Pete yelled from the hallway, Ma! Toby broke the rabbit's house. I didn't. I just dropped it. Pete won't let me carry it. It's too big. Toby's too little. I am not. You are too. Okay, fellas, Mrs. Munro called out as she entered with the milk and lettuce. Let's try to get it in here with as little hysteria as possible, please. Chester turned to me and said under his breath, That lettuce looks repulsive. But if there's any milk left, I get it. I certainly wasn't going to argue with him. I'm a water man myself. Me too. Oh my God. At that moment, the crate arrived, barely standing the strain of being pulled in two directions at once. Ma, Toby says he's going to keep the rabbit in his room. That's not fair. Harold already sleeps in his room. Only sometimes, I thought, when I know he's got a leftover ham sandwich in his drawer. Toby's a nice kid, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't hurt that he shares his stash with me. It was, after all, at one of those late night parties in Toby's room that I first developed my taste for chocolate cake. And Toby, noting my preference, has kept me in chocolate cake ever since. Pete, on the other hand, doesn't believe in sharing. And the only time I tried to sleep on his bed, he rolled over on me and pinned me by the ears so that I couldn't move for the rest of the night. I had a crick in my neck for days. But he's mine, Toby said. I found him. You sat on him, you mean. I found him, and he's sleeping in my room. You can keep smelly old Harold in your room, and Chester too, if you want to, but I'm going to keep the rabbit in mine. Smelly old Harold. I would have bitten his ankle, but I knew he hadn't changed his socks for a week. Smelly indeed. Mr. Monroe spoke up. I think the best place for the rabbit is right here in the living room, on that table by the window. It's light there, and he'll get lots of fresh air. Pete's taller than I am, Toby cried. He'll be able to see the rabbit better. Too bad, Squirt. Okay, said Mrs. Munro through clenched teeth. Let's put him to bed and make him comfortable, and then we can all get some sleep. Why? Pete asked. I don't want to go to sleep. Mrs. Munro smiled a little too sweetly at Pete. Look, Ma, said Toby. He's not drinking his milk. Chester nudged me in the ribs. Didn't I tell you? He asked. Excuse me while I make myself available. Hey, said Toby, we gotta name him. Can't that wait until tomorrow? Asked Mrs. Munro. The boys shouted in unison. No, he has to have a name right now. I have to say I agreed with them. It took them 3 days to name me. And those were the 3 most anxious days of my life. Couldn't sleep at all, worrying they were really going to call me Fluffy, as Mrs. Munro had suggested. Well, all right, sighed Mrs. Munro. What about, say, Bun Bun? There she goes again, I thought. Where does she get them? Yuck, we all said. Well then, how about Fluffy? She offered hopefully. Pete looked up at his mother and smiled. You never give up, do you, Ma? Meanwhile, Chester, who had also been named Fluffy for a short time, was rubbing against Mrs. Munro's ankles and purring loudly. No, Chester, not now, she said, pushing him aside. He wants to help us name him, don't you, Chester? Toby asked as he scooped him up into his arms. Chester shot me a look. I could tell this was not what he had in mind. Come on, Harold, Toby called. You've got to help with the name, too. I joined the family, and serious thinking began. We all peered into the box. It was the first time I had really seen him. So this is a rabbit, I thought. He sort of looks like Chester, only he's got longer ears and a shorter tail, and a motor in his nose. Well, said Pete after a moment, since we found him at the movies, why don't we call him Mr. Johnson? There was a moment of silence. Who's Mr. Johnson? Asked Toby. The guy who owns the movie theater, Pete answered. No one seemed to like the idea. How about Prince? Said Mr. Monroe. Dad, said Toby. Are you kidding? Well, I had a dog named Prince once, he replied lamely. Prince, I thought. That's a silly name for a dog. We found him at a Dracula movie. Let's call him Dracula, Toby said. That's a stupid name, said Pete. No, it's not. And anyways, I found him, so I should get to name him. Mom! You're not going to let him name him, are you? That's favoritism, and I'll be traumatized if you do. Mrs. Monroe looked in wonder at Pete. Please, Mom, please, Dad, let's name him Dracula, cried Toby. Please, please, please. And with each please, he squeezed Chester a little harder. Mrs. Monroe picked up the bowl of milk and moved toward the kitchen. Chester followed her every movement with his eyes, which now seemed to be popping out of his head. When she reached the kitchen door, she turned back and said, Let's not have any more arguments. We'll compromise. He's a bunny, and we found him at a Dracula movie, so we'll call him Bunnicula. Bunnicula. That should make everybody happy, including me. What about me? Muttered Chester. I won't be happy until she puts down that milk. Well, guys, is it okay with you? She asked. Toby and Pete looked at one another, and then at the rabbit. A smile grew on Toby's face. Yeah, Ma, I think that name is just right. Pete shrugged. It's okay, but I get to feed him. Okay, I'm going to put the milk back in the fridge. Maybe he'll drink it tomorrow. What about Chester? Toby said, dropping the frantic cat to the floor. Maybe he would like it. Chester made a beeline for Mrs. Monroe and looked up at her plaintively. Oh, Chester doesn't want any more milk, do you, Chester? You've already had your milk today. She reached down, patted Chester on his head, and walked into the kitchen. Chester didn't move. Okay, bedtime, said Mr. Monroe. Good night, Bunnicula, Toby said. Good night, Count Bunnicula, Pete said sarcastically, in what I took to be his attempt at a Transylvanian accent. Good night, Count Bunnicula. I may be wrong, but I thought I saw a flicker of movement from the cage. Good night, Harold. Good night, Chester. I licked Toby good night. Good night, Smelly Harold. Good night, dumb Chester. I drooled on Pete's foot. Mom, Harold drooled on my foot. Good night, Pete, Mrs. Monroe said with great finality as she came back into the living room, and then more calmly. Good night, Harold. Good night, Chester. Mr. and Mrs. Monroe went up the stairs together. You know, dear, Mr. Monroe said, that was very clever. Bunnicula. I could never have thought of a name like that. Oh, I don't know, Robert, she smiled as she put her arm through his. I think Prince is a lovely name, too. The room was quiet. Chester was still sitting by the closed kitchen door in a state of shock. Slowly, he turned to me. I wish they had named him Fluffy, was all he said. Chapter 2. Music in the night. Oh, we got some people enjoying Bunnicula. I don't like checking obsessively the amount of people watching, but the fact that 2 people are watching is great. Okay, back to Bunnicula. Music in the night. I feel at this time there are a few things you should know about Chester. He is not your ordinary cat. But then, I'm not your ordinary dog, since an ordinary dog wouldn't be writing this book, would he? That should go in the top 10 reasons why you should read a book, because you might come across a book that was written by a dog. Chester came into the house several years ago as a birthday gift from Mr. Monroe, along with 2 volumes of G.K. Chesterton, hence the name Chester, and a first edition of Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. As a result of this introduction to literature, and given the fact that Mr. Monroe is an English professor, Chester developed a taste for reading early in life. I'm going to try to not make too many digressions, but I like how in the fictional world of this book, this cat has probably read more books than many people. I, on the other hand, have developed a taste for books. I found Jonathan Livingston Seagull particularly delicious, probably like licking the spine of the book. From Chester's kittenhood on, Mr. Monroe has used him as a sounding board for all his student lectures. If Chester doesn't fall asleep when Mr. Monroe is talking, the lecture can be counted a success. Every night when the family is sleeping, Chester goes to the bookshelf, selects his midnight reading, and curls up on his favorite chair. He especially likes mystery stories and tales of horror and the supernatural. As a result, he has developed a very vivid imagination. I'm telling you this because I think it's important for you to know something of Chester's background before I relate to you the story of the events following the arrival of Bunnicula into our home. Let me begin with that first night. It seems that after I went to sleep, Chester, still stewing over the lost milk, settled down with his latest book and attempted to ignore the rumbling in his stomach. The room was dark and quiet. This did not prevent his reading, of course, since, as you know, cats can see in the dark. A shaft of moonlight fell across the rabbit's cage and spilled onto the floor below. The wind and rain had stopped, and as Chester read Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, he became increasingly aware of this eerie stillness that had taken their place. As Chester tells it, he suddenly felt compelled to look at the rabbit. I don't know what came over me, he said to me the next morning, but a cold chill ran down my spine. The little bunny had began to move for the first time since he had been put in the cage. He lifted his tiny nose and inhaled deeply, as if gathering sustenance from the moonlight. He slicked his ears back close to his body, and for the first time, Chester said, I noticed the peculiar marking on his forehead. What had seemed an ordinary black spot between his ears took on a strange V shape, which connected with the big black patch that covered his back and each side of his neck. It looked as if he was wearing a coat. No, more like a cape than a coat. Here's some. Right, oh, this way. This way, this way, this way, this way. You can see an expertly drawn cat reading a book, Edgar Allan Poe, apparently. Through the silence, yes, through the silence had drifted the strains of a remote and exotic music. I could have sworn it was a gypsy violin, Chester told me. I thought perhaps a caravan was passing by, so I ran to the window. Where do they live? The caravans are just passing by. I remembered my mother telling me something about caravans when I was a puppy, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember what. What's a caravan? I asked, feeling a little stupid. A caravan is a band of gypsies traveling through the forest in their wagons, Chester answered. Ah, yes, it was coming back to me now. Station wagons? No, covered wagons. The gypsies travel all through the land, setting up camps around great bonfires, doing magical tricks, and sometimes, if you cross their palms with a piece of silver, they'll tell your fortune. You mean if I give them a fork, they'd tell my fortune? My fortune? You mean if I gave them a fork, they'd tell my fortune? I asked breathlessly. Chester looked at me with disdain. Save your silverware, he said. It wasn't a caravan, after all. I was disappointed. What was it? I asked. Chester explained that when he looked out the window, he thought he saw Professor Micklewhite, our next-door neighbor, playing the violin in his living room. He listened for a few moments to the haunting melody and sighed with relief. I've really got to stop reading those horror stories late at night, he thought. It's beginning to affect my mind. He yawned and turned to go back to his chair and get some sleep. As he turned, however, he was startled by what he saw. There in the moonlight As the music filtered through the air, sat the bunny, his eyes intense and staring, an unearthly aura about them. Now, this is the part you won't believe, Chester said to me. But as I watched, his lips parted in a hideous smile, and where the rabbit's buck teeth should have been, two little pointed fangs glistened. Wasn't sure what to make of Chester's story, but the way he told it set my hair on end. Chapter 3. Some unusual goings on. The next few days passed uneventfully. I was very bored. Our new arrival slept all day, and Chester, whose curiosity had been aroused by the strange behavior of the rabbit that first night, had decided to stay awake every night to observe him. Therefore, he spent most of his days sleeping, so I had no one to talk to. The evenings weren't much better. Toby and Pete, who used to play with me as soon as they got home from school, now ran immediately to that silly rabbit's cage to play with him, or at least they'd try to. Bunnicula did not make the most energetic playmate. It took him quite a while to wake up each night, and then when he did awaken, he didn't do much except hop around the living room. He didn't play catch, he didn't fetch, he didn't roll over to get his tummy rubbed. Couldn't understand why they played with him at all. I expect it was because he was new and different, but I was confident that they would soon tire of him and come back to trusty old Harold. Finally, on the morning of the fourth day, I caught Chester bleary-eyed over the water dish. He grumbled at me in a most unpleasant manner. You know, Chester, you were never exactly charming in the morning, but lately you've become downright grumpy. Chester growled in response. What are you doing this for, anyway? What are you looking for? He's just a cute little bunny. Cute little bunny. Chester was amazed at my character analysis. That's what you think. He's a danger to this household and everyone in it. Oh, Chester, I said with an indulgent smile. I think your reading has gone to your head. It's just because I do read that I know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, what are you talking about? I still don't understand. I'm not sure yet, but I know there's something funny about that rabbit. That's why I have to keep alert. But look at you. You're exhausted. You sleep all the time. How can you call that alert? I'm awake when it's important. He sleeps all day, so I sleep all day. So just what have you seen since that first night that makes you so uneasy? Well, said Chester, that is, at this point, Chester started to bathe his tail, which is a cat's way of changing a subject he finds uncomfortable. Then he stumbled sleepily into the living room. So, I asked again, following him, what have you seen? Nothing, he snapped, and proceeded to curl up on his chair to go to sleep. But after a moment, he opened one eye. But that doesn't mean there's nothing to see. For the next few mornings, it was the same routine. I'd be ready for a good romp around the living room, and Chester would go to sleep. Pete and Toby were at school. Mr. Monroe was at the university. He never did too much romping around anyway, and Mrs. Monroe was at her office. No one to play with poor, neglected Harold. At first, I thought I could strike up a friendship with Bunnicula, maybe teach him a few tricks. But I could never wake him up. He was always waking up just about sunset when I wanted to take a snooze. A rabbit, I concluded, is cute to look at, but is generally useless, especially as a companion to dogs. So I would retire each day with my favorite shoe to the rug and chew. Now, some people, especially Mr. and Mrs. Monroe, can't understand my taste for shoes and yell at me for snacking on them. But I always say there's no accounting for taste. For instance, I remember one evening when Mr. Monroe picked some of his sour balls out of the bowl by his chair and dropped a green one on the floor. He didn't notice as it rolled across the room and landed near my nose. I decided this was a perfect opportunity to try one for myself. I placed it in my mouth and wished immediately that I hadn't. As the tears started running out of my eyes, I thought, what's wrong with my mouth? It's turning inside out. Mr. Monroe immediately noticed that something had happened. What's the matter, Harold? Are you looking for someone to kiss? Help! Help! I wanted to cry, but all that came out was an ooh sound. I oohed for days. So, how can anyone who likes green sour balls criticize me for preferring a nice penny loafer or a bedroom slipper? But back to the matter at hand. One morning, Chester had news. That bunny, he whispered to me across our food bowls, got out of his cage last night. Don't be ridiculous, I said. How could he break through that wire? Look at how little he is. That's just it. He didn't break through any wire. He just got out of his cage without breaking anything or opening any doors. I looked puzzled, so Chester told me the following story. Now, Harold, he said, I don't want you thinking I'm not a good watch cat, but after a few hours last night, I grew curious about the time. I went into the hallway and, the new clock they've got, the big one that goes all the way to the ceiling. Well, see, it has this thing in the middle called a pendulum. At first, I figured I would just leave it alone. It looked like that spool they tied on a string and hung from the doorknob for me to play with when I was a kitten. Every time I hit that silly spool with my paw, it would swing back and hit me on the nose. I hated that toy. So naturally, when I saw this one, I decided not to have anything to do with it. I checked the time. It was midnight. I was all set to go back to the living room when something stopped me. Curiosity, I ventured. I suppose you could call it that. I prefer to think of it as the challenge of the unknown. I put one paw over my nose and reached out with the other one and gave it one good smack. I darn near broke my arm. It's still tender. See how swollen it is? He showed me his little paw. I couldn't see anything wrong, but I knew better than to argue with him. Oh, yes, I said. That looks terrible. You must be suffering awfully. You'd better go easy today. He limped dramatically, just far enough to display his new handicap, and continued. I couldn't even get to the pendulum. Somebody had put glass in front of it, and I was pretty mad. I was all set to go back, but at the same time, I couldn't help watching the thing move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was so easy to watch. Before I knew what had happened, I was waking up. You fell asleep? I asked incredulously. I couldn't help it. I didn't even know it had happened. But I looked up at the face of the clock, and it was 12:45. I'd been gone 45 minutes. I ran back into the living room, looked at Bunnicula's cage, and it was empty. I couldn't imagine where he was. Then I noticed a light coming from under the kitchen door. I went into a crouch, stalking the light, when, click, I heard the refrigerator door close, and the light went out. It must have been Mr. Monroe having his midnight snack, I suggested. No, that's what I thought. I jumped on my chair, curled up real quick, and kept one eye open, pretending to be asleep. Slowly, the door to the kitchen squeaked open. This little head poked out from around the corner and looked to either side to see if the coast was clear. Then, guess who came pouncing out all by himself and with that idiotic grin of his plastered all over his face? Well, I guess it wasn't Mr. Monroe, I said. Not unless he wears bunny pajamas and gets very tiny at night. Bunnicula, huh? You got it. Unfortunately, I hadn't positioned myself so that I could see him get back into the cage. And I didn't want to let him know that I had seen anything, so I had to stay put. I still don't know how he got out or back in. At this point, Mr. Monroe came downstairs to make breakfast. I wondered if Chester hadn't dreamed the whole thing. He did admit he'd fallen asleep, and, as I've said, he has quite an imagination. But I was game. After all, there hadn't been any excitement in this place for days. Chester and I took our positions under the kitchen table. We didn't have long to wait. Holy cow! Mr. Monroe yelped as he opened the refrigerator door. He took this funny looking white thing out of the fridge and held it at arm's length. Peter, come down here. What is that? I whispered. Beats me, Chester answered. It looks like a white tomato. Very funny, I said, as Pete came into the kitchen. Peter, have you been playing with your chemistry set in here? No, Dad. Why? I thought this might be one of your experiments. Do you know what it is? Gee, Dad, it looks like a white tomato. Just then, Mrs. Munro and Toby came in the door. What's all the fuss about? Mrs. Munro asked. We were just trying to figure out what this is. Toby pulled it down so we could get a better look. Well, he said, it looks to me like a white tomato. Mr. Munro took a good long look. You know, he said to his wife, it really does look like a white tomato. There's only one way to find out, said Mrs. Munro, who always was the practical one. Let's cut it open, see what's inside. Everybody gathered around the table. I jumped up on a chair, and in all the excitement, no one noticed that I had my paws on the table, which under normal circumstances was discouraged, to say the least. Chester wasn't so lucky. Chester, get off the table, Mrs. Munro said. Chester jumped onto Toby's shoulders, where he stayed to view the proceedings. Oh, nice family drawing. You can kind of still getting used to how to position this, but you can see there's a whole family right there. Mrs. Munro took her sharpest knife and cut cleanly through the thing. It fell into two halves. It's a tomato, all right, said Mrs. Munro. Here are the seeds. But it's all white, Toby observed. And look, said Pete, it's dry. So it is, Mr. Munro said, as he picked up one of the halves. There's no juice at all. Well, Anne, what do you think? It's gone bad, I guess, though I've never heard of a tomato turning white before. Come on, she said, clearing the table. Let's throw it out and have breakfast. Harold, get your paws off the table. Rats. Chester jumped down from Toby's shoulders and motioned for me to follow him into the living room. This had better be important, I said. They're cooking bacon. A white tomato. Very significant, Chester murmured. So it's a white tomato, I said, edging my way back to the kitchen door. What does that have to do with Bunnicula? I can tell you one thing, Chester said. I got a good look at the tomato. There were very suspicious marks on the skin. So, I believe they're teeth marks. So tonight I'm going to reread a book I read last year. How fascinating, I said, as the aroma of frying bacon wafted across my nostrils. And what book might that be? The Mark of the Vampire. What? I stopped dead in my tracks. Meet me tonight after the others have gone to sleep. You'd better take a nap today so you can stay awake. Chester closed his eyes. I shifted my look to Bunnicula, who seemed to be asleep in his cage. A tiny smile sat upon his lips. Happy dream, I wondered, or something else. My reverie was broken by the sound of crunching bacon. I was in the kitchen in a flash. Okay, I'm pretty into the reading Bunnicula right now. I don't know if I'm going to read the entire book tonight. It's already like 11:30, but I'll do one more Bunnicula chapter and then I'll pick it up again because this really is like a literary classic right now, I think. All right, chapter 4, A Cat Prepares. I almost didn't make it to my meeting with Chester that night. Toby had a feast in his room. It was Friday night, and on Friday nights, Toby gets to stay up and read as late as he wants to. Oh my God, to stay up and read. I think the first time I ever stayed up till midnight, it was because I was reading. So nerdy. All right. So, of course, he needs lots of food to keep up his strength. Good food like cheese crackers, chocolate cupcakes, my very favorite, the kind with cream in the middle, pretzels, and peanut butter sandwiches. The last I cannot abide because my mouth always gets stuck. Chocolate cupcakes with cream in the center, however, are another story. This particular evening, I stationed myself on Toby's stomach. Usually, I'm a little more subtle, but having missed out on the bacon at breakfast, I was not about to take any chances on the chocolate cupcakes with the cream in the center. Toby knew what I was after, but sometimes he thinks he's funny and he plays little games with me. Hi, Harold. I bet you'd like a peanut butter sandwich, wouldn't you? Here, you have this one left over from yesterday while I eat this boring old chocolate cupcake, which is nice and fresh and has cream in the middle. Okay, Harold? Ha ha, my sides are splitting. What's the matter? Don't you want the peanut butter sandwich? All right, I'll put it away for another night. Oh, here's something you might like. It's a green sour ball from Dad's candy dish that was stuck to my sock. Would you like that, huh, pal? Oh boy, kid's really hot tonight. No, huh? Well, I'd give you one of my cupcakes, but I know how much you hate chocolate. Would a little drooling on your stomach help convince you otherwise? Oh, you like chocolate. Okay, then. You can have both of them. One thing I have to say about Toby, although he's got a rotten sense of humor, he's a nice kid. Naturally, once I'd eaten both cupcakes, which took approximately 4 seconds, I felt obliged to hang around and let Toby know I was grateful. What better way to show being grateful than to share a few of his cheese crackers? Well, Harold, Toby said sometime later, we've had quite a party, but I have to go to sleep now. I can't keep my eyes open, so I'll have to wait until tomorrow to find out what happens in the next chapter. This is a good book, Harold. It's called Treasure Island, and it's by a man named Robert Louis Stevenson. It's kind of hard reading, though. I have to keep looking the big words up in the dictionary, so it's taking me a long time to get through it. I've always had trouble with words myself. Half the time, they don't mean what I think they're going to. And then, even when I do find out what they mean, I forget the next day, anyways. You might say that I'm smart, but just not the scholarly type. But it's a really good story, Toby continued. It's all about pirates and this little boy just like me. No dogs? And a parrot, Harold. A parrot? What's a parrot? Is there anything about chocolate cake? That's my kind of treasure. Well, good night, Harold. If you're going to sleep here, you'll have to get off my stomach because it's a little full right now. Good night, Toby. I curled up at the foot of the bed, but I couldn't sleep trying to figure out what a parrot was. Thought it might be like a lady pirate, since the words sounded something alike. But then again, I thought it might be an umbrella. Chester would know, I thought, so I went downstairs to ask him. Well, you certainly took your time, Chester snapped as I sauntered casually into the room. I finished my book half an hour ago. Where were you? It so happens I was discussing great works of literature with Toby. Since when is a Twinkies wrapper considered a great work of literature? Ooh, fucking burn. I decided to ignore that. Unfortunately, several chocolate crumbs fell from my mouth to the floor at precisely that moment. As a matter of fact, I said, trying valiantly to regain my dignity, we were talking about Treasure Island. Ever hear of it? Ever hear of it? He sneered. I read that when I was a kitten. Oh, then tell me, Chester, what is a parrot? Chester looked at me scornfully. A parrot, he said, is a tropical zygodactyl bird, order Pits, Piscidaciform. This wow, when I opened Bunnicula, I was not expecting to see whatever the hell this word is, Piscitactiforms, that has a stout curved hooked bill, is often crested, brightly variegated, and an excellent mimic. In other words, Harold, a parrot is a little bird with a big mouth. Oh, I said after a moment. I thought maybe it was an umbrella. Did you get so busy discussing parrots with Toby that you forgot you were going to meet me here? This is important, Harold. Still wasn't really sure what a parrot was, but I decided this was not the time to pursue it. Come over here, Chester commanded, indicating his chair, and let me show you this book. I looked at the chair. Chester was already sitting in it, with a very large book open in front of him. I don't think there's going to be room for both of us, Chester, I said. Come on, come on. You're just wasting time. Just jump up here. I surveyed the scene carefully. I knew I would have to get a running start since there was just a tiny spot left for me, and I would never be able to fit into it if I pulled myself up slowly. Apparently, I was taking too long for Chester's liking. Will you get up here? He hissed. Okay, if that's what you want. I ran and jumped onto the chair, landing with a great kerplop. Chester, where are you? I cried. I couldn't see anything but the back of the chair. I'd forgotten to turn myself around. I'm here, you great oaf. I turned my head. What are you doing on the floor? You knocked me off the chair. Now just stay put. I'm coming back up. I moved to the back of the chair, and Chester landed on the front. Now, let's see, he said. We both have to see the book. You come over here, and I'll move this way. I don't know if you've ever watched a cat try to decide where to sit, but it involves a lot of circling around, sitting, getting up again, circling some more, thinking about it, lying down, standing up, bathing a paw or tail, and circling. A dog, on the other hand, sits. This looks like a good spot, a dog will say to himself. He will then lower his body to the spot in question, and is usually so secure in his decision that he will fall asleep immediately. Chester took what felt like 20 minutes to settle himself in, and just as I was drifting off, the kick started. Come on, Harold, quit hogging the seat. Wake up. What were you trying to do? Take a little cat nap? Ha ha ha. I yawned. Now, said Chester, turning to the book, let's get down to brass tacks. What exactly is on your mind? I asked. This book and that rabbit, Chester replied. Now tell me, Harold, have you noticed anything funny about that rabbit? No, I said, but I've certainly noticed a lot of funny things about you recently. Think about it. That rabbit sleeps all day. So do I, and so do you. Furthermore, he's got funny little sharp teeth. So do I. So do you. Furthermore, he gets in and out of his cage by himself. What kind of rabbit can do that? A smart one, I said. I could do it. We're not talking about you, Harold. We're talking about the rabbit. Now, where did they find him? At the movies. Yes, but what movie? Dracula, I said. So? So, he said quickly. Remember the note around his neck? What language was it in? An obscure dialect of the Carpathian mountain region, I answered smugly. He didn't know everything. Aha, Chester said. But what area of the Carpathian mountain region? Area? What's an area? I looked at him blankly. Transylvania, he cried triumphantly. And that proves my point. What point? What are we even talking about? And don't forget the white tomato. That's most important of all. But what? This book, said Chester, disregarding me, tells us what we need to know. What? I practically screamed. What does it tell us? What does this book have to do with Bunnicula? What are you talking about? What's going on here? I can't stand it anymore. Chester regarded me coolly. You're really very excitable, Harold. That's not good for your blood pressure. I put my paws around his throat. Tell me, I said in a low, threatening voice, or I'll squeeze you till you pop. Okay, okay, don't get upset. Now, this book tells you everything you've always wanted to know about vampires, but were afraid to ask. Personally, I had never wanted to know anything about vampires, but at the moment, I was afraid to tell that to Chester. I still don't understand what vampires have to do with our little furry friend. One, Chester said. Vampires do not sleep at night. They sleep only during the day. The same holds true for this rabbit. Two, vampires can get in and out of locked rooms. Bunnicula gets in and out of his locked cage. This was beginning to interest me. Didn't you say something about the refrigerator? That's right. He got the refrigerator open all by himself. 3. Vampires have long pointed teeth. They're called fangs. Well, don't we have fangs? No, we have canines. That's different. What's different about it? Fangs are more pointed, and vampires use fangs to bite people on the neck. Ugh, who'd want to do that? Vampires would. That's who. Wait a minute. I saw Mrs. Monroe bite Mr. Monroe on the neck once. Does that mean she's a vampire? Boy, are you dumb? She's not a vampire. She's a lawyer. Ooh, a little joke for the adults when they're reading this to their kids. She bites necks. I don't think that's quite the same thing. Now, Bunnicula does not bite people on the neck, at least not so far. But he does bite vegetables. On the neck? I asked. Vegetables don't have necks, Harold. Vegetables are like that. It's like dogs. Dogs don't have brains. Dogs are like that. Oh, yeah, I said. Of course he bites vegetables. All rabbits bite vegetables. He bites them, Harold, but he does not eat them. That tomato was all white. What does that mean? It means that he paints vegetables, I ventured. It means he bites vegetables to make a hole in them, and then he sucks out all the juices. But what about all the lettuce and carrots that Toby has been feeding him in the cage? Aha! What indeed, Chester said. Look at this. Whereupon he struck his paw under the chair cushion and brought out with a flourish an assortment of strange white objects. Some of them looked like unironed handkerchiefs, and well, the others didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. What are they? I asked. Chester smiled. Lettuce and carrots, he said. White lettuce and carrots. I found them hidden behind his cage. I was aghast. What did it all mean? Could Chester be right? Was this harmless-looking little ball of fluff really a vampire? Just then, Chester let out a yelp. Look, he said, the cage is empty again. Oh, we're fools. We're fools. We've let him get out of our sight. This is your fault. My fault? You're the one who took 20 minutes to sit down. Well, if you hadn't knocked me off in the first place. Wait a minute. Why are we arguing? Let's find Bunnicula. Just then, we heard a click in the kitchen. Refrigerator, I whispered. Chester nodded. We jumped down and moved cautiously to the kitchen door. Shh! Chester warned unnecessarily as we crept along. Don't make any noise. We don't want him to hear us coming. Obviously, I retorted. The light went out under the door. He must have closed the refrigerator, Chester said. Easy now. We pushed the door open. The kitchen was dark. There was not a sound. Chester! What? I can't see. I can, but I can't see him. He's not here. There was a soft scamper across the linoleum, and we turned just in time to see a little white tail bounce out the door into the living room. Drat, we've missed him. Come on, Harold, let's see if we can catch up with him. Chester started toward the door. Wait, Chester, what's that on the floor by the refrigerator? He turned. This new object interested him more than following Bunnicula. Watch out, he said. I'll take care of this. He slunk across the room slowly, muscles taut, eyes alert. When he was about 6 inches away, he stuck out his paw, closed his eyes, and batted at the object tentatively. I don't think he made any contact. Get closer, I said. Chester's eyes popped open. Who's the cat here? He asked. I know what I'm doing. And he proceeded to bat the air 3 more times. What is it? I squealed as my throat contracted in fear. I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it's not alive. Oh boy, if I wait for you, we'll be here all night. I walked bravely to the object and sniffed it. Well, said asked Chester. Beats me. Chester came closer. After a moment of close examination, he gasped. I jumped. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Harold, Chester blurted. What? What? It's. Yes. It's. What is it, Chester? It's a white zucchini. Okay, I'm gonna put my little bookmark in this now. So that's the first 4 chapters of Bunnicula. True classic. Incredible imagery. I never thought I'd say the term white tomato that many times, but it's still fun. Uh, oh yeah, people aren't even watching, but that's okay. It's completely fine. I'll do more Bunnicula another time. All right, thanks. Bye.